I'm Janeane. This is KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine, and this is Get the Funk Out. Standing by to join me is author Rosemary Keevil, and we're going to talk about her new book, The Art of Losing It, a memoir, and it's a gripping and heart-rending journey talking about grief and addiction. Welcome to the show, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit, before we get into the book, your backstory as far as a writer. Did you always love to write? Is this your first book?
This is my first book, but I've been writing for a living for a long time. I cut my teeth as a TV news reporter in Toronto, and I was working for a local station, but we did a lot of national stories. And since then, I've had a number of jobs in the media, including my own radio show.
Wonderful.
It was called the Rosemary Keevil Show, and it was morning drive time in Vancouver. And it was a current affairs live radio show with some call-in.
Fantastic.
And I was also a managing editor of a professional women's magazine. So I've had, for years, I've been writing, but it's all been nonfiction, it's all been journalism.
Yes.
So it was a new foray to actually be writing a book and to be writing about something from a personal point of view. I wasn't used to talking about my emotions.
Yeah.
So,
when I heard about this book, and I thought about how a lot of my guests, and my show started out of grief. I lost a friend of mine the end of 2010. And then I took a year off, and I came up with the idea of Get the Funk Out because I was in my own funk. But then really it was a platform for people to share stories. So when I heard about your book, I thought, what a story, what a journey you had to go through. Could you walk us through what exactly happened?
Well, I was living quite a blessed life with a doting husband and two little girls. They were 2 and 4, and an interesting career. And then my brother was diagnosed with AIDS, and he was living in Vancouver, and so was I, and our family was actually back east. So I was really his contact with the healthy world. And my husband got diagnosed with terminal cancer about 2 weeks after my brother was diagnosed. And my husband was given 6 weeks without chemotherapy and 4 weeks, and 1 year with chemotherapy. And
wow.
AIDS.
Excuse me, was there any sign that your husband felt sick? Something was off?
The only sign was a sore knee. And wow. we thought it was maybe from a hockey injury. Mm-hmm. But we were actually, the first time he had a sore knee was January 8th, I think it was, in 1991. And we went to see a Paul Simon concert, and we went early and we got the scalpers tickets. So we were quite early for the show. Mm-hmm. So we didn't know what to do to wait. So we went for a walk nearby to have dinner, but it had just snowed recently. So it was all, the streets were all icy and the sidewalk was all undulating. So, and he complained his knee was sore. And then a couple of days later, his knee was sore when we were building snowmen outside with the girls. And so he eventually got a couple of little lumps. So this was just 2 or 3 weeks before his diagnosis. And he didn't feel badly. He just had these symptoms.
Were the lumps like lipomas?
No, they were just little lumps on his leg or on his rib. Just something that could actually be biopsied.
Okay.
So they were able to figure it out, and but it was a brutal diagnosis. So, and the kids were little. And I was running around from hospital to hospital, from crisis to crisis. And one doctor said I was in basically crisis management mode, which I was.
You were.
Yeah. And then my husband lasted until September of that year. My brother lasted another 6 months after that.
Mm. Oh my gosh. And then what happened with you? Who was looking after you?
Oh, well, when you're going through that, you're in survival mode. You're not, not a lot you can do to look after yourself. And I hung it together for about 6 years, as much as having it together can be under the circumstances. But then I sunk into an abyss of drugs and alcohol. And I was a high functioning alcoholic and addict, in that I was around and I was able to pick the girls up from school and still have a career. But I wasn't always that present emotionally, and I did very scary things. And so that lasted 6 years, and I was able to get into rehab after that. I had driven the kids, I had driven them a number of times, drunk and high, but at this time I had blacked out. I did not have an accident. I did not have an accident.
Did not have an accident?
No. This was a blessing, obviously, and this ended up being a gift of desperation. I just thought if I could be this bad, I went to see a friend's spiritual counselor, and I told her what I had done, and I said, "Do you think I need a spiritual retreat?" And she said, "Rosemary, what about rehab?"
We'll just call it that.
There's an idea. It's not funny at all.
No.
But it was, in hindsight, it was like, what was I thinking, right?
Right.
I did a lot of, I crossed a lot of lines in the sand, a lot of them. And in hindsight, of course, I go, well, what was I thinking? The other day, I was having lunch at a restaurant with my 31-year-old daughter. And she said that I used to spank them. I said, I didn't spank you. I don't believe in spanking. You don't believe in spanking? Well, do you believe in driving your kids drunk and high when do you believe in driving your friends? Do you believe in driving your kids' friends drunk and high? Do you believe in screaming out at my best friend's bar mitzvah? And I'm kind of going, point well taken.
Yeah.
I don't believe in a lot of things, which I did.
Yeah. So how is your relationship now? Is it better?
With the girls?
Yes.
Yes, actually, interesting. I reread the book recently when the final copy came out, and I was I was disappointed in the ending.
Really?
I didn't like my ending.
You'll have to do another one.
Should rewrite this book because it doesn't actually. I didn't want to tie it up in a bow because it wasn't tied up in a bow at the end of 2003 when the book ends. Yeah. But there was hope, and in the epilogue, I could have said, "Today, I'm very close with both my daughters, and they're both thriving. They're both in fulfilling marriages and fulfilling careers. Wonderful. And by some miracle, I mean, I must have done something right. I got sober when they were 13 and 15. So just do the math, for 6 years before that.
Yeah, I
was in my illness, and so it's hard to believe actually that they're doing well, and I'm very, very close to both of them.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
How long did you think about writing this book?
Oh, well, I think just for a few years after it occurred to me I should write about it. So probably for a few years I thought about it because I'm a writer. That's what I do, and I write nonfiction. That's what I do. Sure. So probably just for a few years, but I think I always knew, in the back of my mind, that I would be writing about it. Was it
for you to leave this as something for your girls, but also for others that needed it?
Well, it wasn't so much for the girls, but for others who might be going through the same thing. Mm-hmm. that would be. And today I still write about addiction, hoping to be a resource.
Well, and here we are in a pandemic, and we have a mental health pandemic, as you
Mhm.
know, which is huge. So I would think your book is very timely.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. What else would you like people to know about it?
Well, that one can get better, that I'd like people to understand, both with grief and with addiction, that the only way past it is through it.
Yes.
So with grief, one has to realize that grief is exhausting. Grief takes time. Grief takes rest and sleep. There's a huge hole in your soul. With time, the edges will soften. The hole will never go away, but the edges will soften. But one needs to go into the grief and acknowledge it, as opposed to running away from it and pretending it's not there.
Yes.
And with the addiction part of that, it's important to go into the reasons why one was numbing. But the only way past that is through that. So one needs to go into the wreckage of one's past.
Which is painful.
Very painful. All of the above is very painful.
Yeah.
But the only way past it is through it. The only way through healing is to actually go through it and address everything, all the reasons and issues that were involved in the numbing, and resolve them, or just come to some kind of peace with them. That was the other takeaway, is with both grief and addiction. Grief, there's different stages of grief, which I won't necessarily go into, but the last one is acceptance. And once you get to acceptance is when you can let yourself grieve and go through your understanding and get professional help. And with addiction, all the things that I did, ultimately, it was the acceptance, which was the freedom. I have to accept, okay, what am I going to do about it today? Yes, this happened. So what am I going to do about it today?
Mm-hmm.
So
I like that.
It's the acceptance, which is probably the most powerful message that I got from it.
Mm-hmm. I know, sometimes people are very hard on themselves when they lose someone. When I lost my friend, and it's been 10 years this December, and I'm still not over it, but I've moved through it and processed it a lot. But there's no time frame. It's very personal how you move through grief, how long it takes you. But I always say, just, take one small step. Just try to take a step forward, do something for yourself, do something kind for yourself, because you're hurting, and you will go through it, but it does take time.
And you're right, it is personal.
Very personal. Yeah. Where can people find out more about you?
Oh, well, I have a website. It's called rosemarykeevil.com. Keevil. And then there's a lot of information about me on the website.
That's fantastic. I had looked at your bio. You certainly have such an interesting background in media and radio. And how long were you in radio?
Oh, for about 5 or 6 years. I love radio. It's really fun.
It is.
Especially since I was in TV, and TV, you have so many more mechanics to worry about.
Yes.
But with radio, there's a bit of mystery there, and it's kind of fun.
Exactly.
I really like live radio.
I do too. I love this. I mean, it's been tough with quarantine. However, I've connected with more people like this, and it's been very meaningful. And normally I do the show live at the station on Mondays, but with doing pre-record, all of a sudden I said to myself in March, wait, I could have an opportunity to connect with people face to face. And if they want to be on camera, great. If they don't, that's fine. But this has been incredibly meaningful to connect with people like you.
Well, I agree. I used to always often did my interviews because I was writing them on my blog on the telephone. But can that idea now. I mean, I love the Zoom interview, and the audio recording's much easier than trying to do it on the phone. So
Yes.
it's opened up a whole new world.
Yes. For people that are watching this, that are going through something right now, what advice would you give them?
Oh, well, as I said, I think it's number one is the acceptance. Allow oneself to grieve, and to, with addiction, accept the things that have happened. Accept that there will be guilt and shame, but if you work through that, that too softens with time, as does the pain of the grief will soften with time. It'll never go away.
Right.
But that's why the acceptance is really, really important.
And I feel that talking to people is so helpful. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be your family and friends. It could be a therapist, a grief group, someone.
Well, I firmly believe in professional therapy.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful.
Do. Yeah.
Because we've never been faced with something like with what we're going through. And there are people that haven't seen their loved ones, who've lost loved ones, family, friends, all different ages. So I definitely agree with you, going to talk to somebody. So Rosemary, I really enjoyed this. I want to thank you so much for connecting. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, that's great. It's lovely to be here, and great to have the opportunity to tell my story and maybe help some people.
And like I said, I have a copy of your book. I have all the info on my show blog, which is getthefunkoutshow.kuci.org. And I'll be sharing this conversation in video and audio.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.